Greetings, fellow Watford fans. It's Omar here with another edition of the Youorns 10-minute take on Luton Town 2, Watford 0. Yes, indeed, the derby came and the derby went, and Watford were no-shows. That's really all you need to know about this game today between Luton and Watford in a derby match where everyone knows how much it means to get the win. Everyone knows, both sets of supporters know how important this game is during any season, whether you are in League One, League Two, the Schoolboy League, the Premier League, whichever league you're in, you know that Watford against Luton, Luton against Watford are the games you circle on the calendar as Watford fans, as Hatters fans. You know that this game means everything. The problem is that only one team recognized what this game meant today, and that was the home team at the Kennel. Horrible pitch, horrible ground, but the team are playing more than above their weight. And of course, with the manager that we got rid of, what a smart move that was to get rid of Rob Edwards, because Rob Edwards now enjoyed his revenge on a dish that was served very cold to Watford players, because Watford were as cold as ice today in this game. No blood, no guts, no passion, no heat in this derby, except at the very, very end of the game when the scoreline had been decided. Watford did not lay a glove on this Luton Town team today. That's the truth of it all, and that's the fact of it all, and that's all you need to know. No fight, no spirit, no hunger. What was it? 2 shots on target today for Watford, a team who some fans of Watford still thought had a chance at the playoffs, still thought were going to get to the playoffs, still believed that they had an opportunity to do that. And of course, mathematically, they still do. But realistically, when you look at the way Watford played today, when you look at the way that Watford have played throughout this entire season, how in God's name can you ever believe that Watford would make the playoffs? They've had 1 3-game winning streak all season long. They have not brought a catalog of consistent results into this game. They have brought you inconsistency and predictability in inconsistency. And when you have that, it doesn't matter how many games you have left to play, how many points you have left to play for. I've said this over and over again. It doesn't matter how many points you have left to play for. You are not going to get the job done if you don't bring a passion, a dedication, an energy, and a spirit to the things you do on the pitch. If you don't bring those things, it doesn't matter what kind of footballer you've got. They could be the most talented footballer on earth. They could be Pele, they could be whomever. If you don't bring passion and spirit and endeavor to your football, if you don't bring a simple game of football, if you don't make the game more simple, if you try to be all flair, flash, and dash, you're going to get found out. And this Watford team today didn't even bring flair, didn't bring anything. They had 5 minutes to start the game where they moved the ball quickly, had some purpose about them, had a bit of devil in them. And after those 5 minutes, you didn't hear from them again. There was a few moments to start the first 10 minutes where Watford were on top, but it doesn't matter how on top you are in a match. You've got to do something with your on topness, if you will. You have to do something with the football. You can have all the possession in the world, but if you don't score from it, if you don't create goal-scoring opportunities from it, what difference does it make? Yes, Watford were on top in the second half for the first 10 or 15 minutes when Luton were especially poor, but Watford didn't do anything with it. Watford didn't trouble the Luton goalkeeper. 2 shots on target, one of them a very tame shot on target in the second half. They never felt Watford today, Luton Town. They had to feel us, and they didn't feel us because we didn't feel like playing. And let me change that from we to those players, because the fans showed up, the Watford supporters showed up, albeit in coaches. But these Watford players, time and time and time again, as the Temptations would say, it's the same old song. They didn't turn up at all, didn't care, Didn't play for the badge, didn't run around and play for the shirt, didn't care about the fans. Whether they clap the fans off or not now is academic to me. It doesn't matter what they do, whether they clap the fans off or whether they don't. It's their play on the field or their lack of play on the field that's doing the talking, that's talking the loudest volume. And these Watford players now need to be cleared out of this team. They need to be cleared out. They can go clear off at the end of this season, be done with them. And let's bring in players who want to play for Watford, play for the shirt, not only the wages. Players that are going to give you some energy and some spirit. I get it. Every player likes to play for wages. But if you care about a club and you care about the fans, you're going to want to give 110%. And there wasn't anything close to even a 70% effort today from these Watford players. Daniel Bachmann was, I think, one of the lone star players who gave of his best. And yes, there's been lots of criticism about Daniel Bachmann and his distribution. I understand that. Why isn't Okoye playing these games? Why isn't Maduka Okoye playing? I don't know why he's not. I don't think he's injured. I don't know that he's injured. Maybe he is. Maybe that's news to me. I don't know. But can it hurt Watford to now make a change in goal? I know Daniel Bachmann did everything he could today, had some great saves, really point blank, an excellent save in the first half of the game. And then 8 minutes after that, Luton got their goal. Gabriel Osho, who got sent off in October when we hammered Luton at the Vic, scored against us today. Poetic justice, poetic revenge for them, for him. How harmful would it possibly be to put Maduka Okoye between the sticks in some of these remaining games? The playoffs are done. I don't care what anybody says. It's a 6-point gap now. With Watford have 7 games to play. They are not making up. They're not making up 6 points. Off the back of what we've seen for 2/3 of the season, no chance. No chance. And I'm one of the most optimistic people you'll ever hear from. No chance. They're done. If they can't even get up for a derby, a match, as I was saying earlier, means so much to the supporters. If they can't get up for that, they can't get up for anything except their wages, because that's the only reason I think they got out of bed today. They know that they're getting their paycheck, but fans had to get up for hours and hours in advance to travel to the kennel. They had to get up, plan. Some of them probably stayed at hotels. Some of them traveled from wherever. They traveled from all over the place, not just from Watford. They traveled from the North Country, from Tyneside, Wearside. They traveled from Humberside. They traveled from the Northwest, Lancashire, all these places, all these counties they traveled from, the Southwest, the South Coast, from London, from all surrounding areas, Berkshire. They traveled from all over the place to come and see this lot play. And what did the players give them in return? Absolutely nothing. Poor defending, poor team defending for that second goal that went in late on around the 89th minute mark or whenever it was, 90th minute, the game was done. Watford never looked like conjuring up anything. It reminded me of the game against Queen's Park Rangers. Very ineffectual and indifferent. João Pedro, to me, got lost today. I thought Ken Sema gave you some effort. He showed you signs, gave you something. But João Pedro didn't finish well. The corners were not good today. The set pieces were not good today. Didn't like the corners. I think there was only one corner that was any good, Kone's. Kone did not have his usual game. He did put in a tackle, but he was only one or two players who put in a couple of tackles. I think it was the third. It was Kone, Loser, and Chowdhury, all the midfield. But Chris Wilder's subs weren't great either. And Britt Asamoah is just not going to cut it, is he, at Watford? Look, he's a great pro. He's been a veteran player. He's done some very good things at lots of clubs. He got the goal for Watford a few weeks ago against Birmingham. But let's face it, Britt Asamoah is not going to be your savior at Watford Football Club, with all due respect to him. And he's not as fit as I think he would like to be at the minute. And he's still rounding into shape. But the players who have been fit all season, who've been playing all season, are still not putting in, I think, the maximum application to these games. Now, granted, as I said, there were spells in this game. If you look at the first 10 minutes of the second half and the first 5 minutes of the first, where Watford were looking pretty good in terms of their approach. Their approach was good. But they just never, ever kept the intensity going. And even a subpar Luton side for the first 10, 15, even 20 minutes of that second half, Watford still did not get inspired to do anything against them. And that's very telling. Very telling. And that Watford lost to a Luton side who were not extraordinary today, who weren't above average today, who weren't world beaters today, who weren't Brazil today, that Watford lost to a Luton side that really were, I think, quite average today. They got the 2 goals well-deserved, and they did deserve to win the game. That's clear. But I've seen Luton play better than this and not win by 2-0. I've seen Luton play better than this. I'm a Watford supporter, but I watch football, even when my team's not playing. And I've watched some Luton games this season, and Luton have played better than this and got a draw or a defeat. And the fact that Luton would play, I think, pretty average football for much of that game today and still come out 2-0 winners is an indictment on this Watford team. Not taking away anything from Luton credit-wise. They deserve to win the game. I just said that. But the fact that they won it so easily without a significant challenge being put in on a Luton player, that's despicable for a derby match. That should not be allowed. We all know that in the past there'd be managers, GT, who absolutely wouldn't have allowed that. You wouldn't have been able to get away with that. Today, it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? I'm not saying that Chris Wilder didn't demand things of the club. He did. He did demand things of this team. And the comments post-match were very clear. There needs to be a change. There needs to be a reset. The players don't care. You can't claim to care about Watford as a player and then put in a no-show performance like this. You can't claim to care. They went through the motions. They just didn't care. They didn't care. There was 10 minutes in the first half and maybe 10 or so minutes of the second half, and that was it. That was it. It was done. They didn't care. They didn't care. Then the defending was atrocious. Spoke for itself. You need to put 2 strikers on the pitch, by the way. If you're going to bring Britt on, you shouldn't be taking off Keenan Davis. And that tells me that either Britt and Keenan have not worked together enough. Because I don't know why you'd take off Keenan in a game where you've got no goals, you're down 1-0, you ain't scored many away from home this calendar year. You only scored 4 goals away from home this calendar year. 2 of them are at Reading. 2 of them. 2 of the 4 goals that you scored in 2023 away from home came at Reading. So this team was never going to score loads of goals away. The only time they did was against Stoke City. And Stoke right now, have you seen Stoke lately? They're playing like a house on fire. Watford FC are in crisis right now. On the pitch with these players in particular. And you can talk about the fan base as well. The relationship needs to be improved. And that's an understatement. But what's going on that pitch is unacceptable. The owner has to see that. Surely he knows that he's going to be at one of these the fan meeting at some point in the near future. I'm not sure when that's going to be. And by the way, if you are a Watford supporter watching this, I need for you to articulate what your suggestions and your solutions would be, what you would go about doing to improve this club. If you had Gino and Scott sitting in front of you right now, what would you be presenting as a plan for change to them? Obviously, I know you'd probably have some choice words, some of you perhaps, but what would you present to them in the matter of plans? Because if I do get picked and I'm being told that I'm under consideration to be picked, it's early yet. Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast has talked about this. It's a very, very early process at this stage from what I'm being told. But what I need to do is ask you as a Watford supporter watching this, what changes would you propose to Gino and Scott so that if I do get picked for this fan forum, these suggestions that you put forth will be put to Gino and Scott. And I've already got my suggestions and ideas and plans that I would like to share with them. So I would encourage you to do that here, fellow supporter, fellow Watford supporter, because we need to make this club better. Surely the Watford brass know that this is not good enough. There were all these things that we saw the last couple of weeks, including Andrew French's Watford Observer op-ed. Really, that was potentially an opinion piece, op-ed. And he was telling Watford fans, get behind the Hornets. Well, we definitely always do that. We've been doing that for decades. We can get behind the team, and getting behind the team includes criticizing the team when it's not pulling its weight. That's actually a form of support. If you love someone or love a club and you see the someone or the some club that you love doing a swan dive, you do care about them by criticizing them and telling them to change what they're doing and offering solutions and suggestions. If you have a loved one who's not going right, you might be critical of them, but you offer solutions and suggestions. That's support. That's telling the person you're going off the deep end, you need some help, and I'm here to help you. Just listen to us or talk to us and tell us what is going on with you. Same applies to a football club, as I've said. Clearly, this is not going the way it should. Rob Edwards today was vindicated, and the club deserves this defeat, quite frankly. It pains me to say that, but the club deserves this defeat today. This was a lesson for the club. You shouldn't have got rid of this man, and now he's come back to bite you in the backside. That's what he's done. No one on the planet is happier about this victory than Rob Edwards. I can assure you that now. He's probably right now having a couple of beers, or maybe if he prefers wine, he's having a few glasses of red the minute. No one's happier in Luton now than Rob Edwards is. Absolutely over the moon. And he could get happier still in the next couple of months because I think they're going to the playoff final. And I think it's a distinct possibility they might be getting promoted on top of that. And that would be the ultimate lesson for this Watford front office and the owner, to see Rob Edwards in a playoff final, lifting a playoff final trophy for Luton. Karma comes around, and I think that would be karma for this Watford club. I will always back this club. I will always back the players, but when this club does things that aren't in the best interest of the players or the fans or the club itself, I'm not going to stay silent about that. And there's a lot of Watford fans who won't stay silent about it either. But Watford today showed you why they don't deserve to be anywhere near playoffs and showed you why they don't care. Playoff game, playoff implications essentially today against the Luton Town side who didn't need this game as much as Watford did. A Luton Town side that are firmly in the playoffs. They are nailed on for a third or fourth place finish. They were in the playoffs last season. Luton have made progression. Meanwhile, Watford have been going in the opposite direction. And that should tell you something if you're the owner of this club. Your nearest rival and your most hated rival up the M1 is showing signs, and more than signs, they're showing you demonstrable improvement. While your club is going in the opposite direction. It's taking a swan dive. Taking a swan dive. That should alert you somewhere. And I've had Watford supporters come up to me on social media specifically, I should say, and say they've had it. They feel disillusioned, isolated, alienated. One Watford supporter basically said, not even basically, he actually said this. What do we think of Watford? And he used the four-letter word beginning with S. And then he said, what do we think of the four-letter word? And he said, Watford. And this is a Watford supporter. I know he is. He's been at the forums I've been doing for a long time, always gives an opinion on Watford. And today, that is what he said about the club he loves. If you're someone in the Watford front office watching this right now, how does that make you feel? To hear Watford fans saying this about the team they love, does that do something to you? Does that move you in any way? That you've got fans at this club that you're running who are expressing such dismal disappointment and saying these things about the club they love, saying the things that you'd expect a Luton Town fan to say about Watford. That's really sad. But there's a reason for the sadness, and there's a reason for that kind of comment. And it's not because fans are just grumpy and they just want to have a bellyache and because they're moaning and groaning. There's reasons why some Watford fans feel the way they do. And that didn't just fall out of the sky. It has everything to do with what is going on at Vicarage Road Stadium behind the scenes. And this game is further confirmation that these players don't face accountability and they won't be held accountable. So, in closing, these final 7 games of the season are auditions for next season. That's what these games are now, because Watford can just give up the ghost and forget playoffs. Forget the playoffs. 6 points could be 60 points as far as I'm concerned, because that's what it feels like based on what I've seen this season, what you've seen. The 6-point gap that Watford presently have to make up to just get toward that playoff line, that could be 60 points. That may as well be 60 points because they are far, far away from playoffs. And if they ever were to get there, and they won't, they would be blown out of the water in that first round, that semifinal round. They'd be blown out of the water. They would be. They would not stand a chance. So what we need to do is rebuild, because we're in a rebuilding mode anyway, and start to play these academy players more often. Start to do a long-term plan development. Make it happen. The time is now. Forget this season. This season's gone. You remember the old Fleetwood Mac song, those of you who are Watford supporters of a certain age? Don't stop. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. Yesterday's gone. You got to think about tomorrow now, because today is absolutely inexcusable and it's a no-show. And Watford today, in terms of the club and how they're treating the fans, are very much the same. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.